All right, my precious cherubs. Here is one of the books that was your parents' favorite books when they were little. This is Harvey Potter's Balloon Farm. It's by Geraldine Nolan. Harvey Potter was a very strange fellow indeed. He was a farmer, but he didn't farm like my daddy did. He farmed a genuine U.S. government-inspected balloon farm. No one knew exactly how he did it. Some folks say that it wasn't real, that it was magic. But I know what I saw, and those were real, actual balloons growing right out of the plain old ground. Harvey Potter had some of the prettiest colors you'd ever want to see on a balloon. Pleasing purple, orange ray sun, yellin' yellow, there was Rip-Too shot red and jelly bean black, bloomin' blue and grassy green. He had all kinds of shapes, too. Round balloons, long ones, animal shapes, clowns with big noses and mouths. He even grew monster balloons with scary faces and great big sharp teeth just in time for Halloween. I tell you, Harvey Potter was a strange fellow, all right. To look at him, he was quite plain. Never wore nothing to draw attention to himself. His hair was kept close cropped to his head. Overalls with a shirt underneath were his uniform. There's nothing special about his face, neither. What wasn't so plain about him was the gonder stick he carried with him wherever he went. Sometimes he used it to scratch his back, but mostly he just carried it under his arm. It was Weasel Mayfield who called the government on him, so the government come out to Harvey Potter's balloon farm bright and early one morning. Our whole town turned out for him, and though nobody said what they thought, we all held our breath hoping we could keep our balloons. Now, we never knowed how to grow nothing but trees. Maple, sycamore, pine, oak, and regular kinds of stuff like corn and okra and tomatoes. But Harvey Potter grew balloons, and no one knew what he used for seed neither. Anyway, the government men were standing around in white coats and white hats and white gloves. They kept us so far back we could hardly see. But I climbed right up in that sycamore tree, and I saw everything. They pulled and they poked, and finally they pricked one of those plants with a pin. And what was supposed to happen did. The balloon popped. Even they couldn't argue with that. Poor little balloon. So they gave Harvey Potter the right to grow balloons. He never asked 'em for it, mind you, but he took it anyway, just to be polite. Let me tell you, it made everybody happy. Well, almost everybody. Weasel was sore. Now, I had quite an interest in Harvey Potter's balloon farm, and I decided I was going to get to know him. He didn't seem to mind. In fact, he let me get to know him right good. I'd bring him lemonade or sit on his porch and swing in his swing, but he never would confide in me about how he grew those balloons. I didn't pry. After a while, I just liked going around him. He didn't ask you no questions about why you weren't this or that. He just let a person be. He let a person sit and think out loud sometimes, and well, that's a mighty good thing to do. But still, something in me was a hankering to know. So I decided I was going to go out there in the night time. That's when he did his field work. I told you he was strange. To this day, I am indebted to that sycamore tree and that big old moon. It was as full as it was wide that night. I saw him the second he opened his door, just as plain as day. He stood there on his front porch, hands inside his pockets, looking straight ahead where the fields were. That conjure stick was under his arm. He just stood there, eyes staring straight ahead at something off yonder ways. And then he came down off of that porch. Step, step, step. His steps all seemed so big and so loud. Must have been his heavy field shoes. He walked down into the field and, without a sign of warning, commenced to holler. The next thing I knew, he started dancing and a-prancing with that stick held out in front of him like it was his dancing partner. And then that stick started to glow a nice orangey color and stood up directly on its own. And when it rose up into the air, Harvey Potter rose right up along with it. The two of them were making some mighty fine footwork, 6 feet or so up off the ground. They were a-floating and a-bobbing. Why, it appeared as if the two of them had turned into glowing balloons themselves. Altogether, it was a very strange sight, which got even stranger. Harvey Potter dropped back down to earth, grabbed a hold of that stick, and waved it round over his head. He hooped and he hollered and he yelled as he carried on so. Ee-yaw, ya-ya-ya-ya-ya-ya-ya-ya. Ee-yaw, ya-ya-ya-ya-ya-ya. Now, I'm not ashamed to say I was mighty scared. I'd have jumped right there, down out of that tree and run for home, but my eyes were just plain glued to Harvey Potter. Then Harvey let go of that stick, and it started to bounce and float over the field, dropping down here and there in nice, neat rows. And all the while, Harvey Potter just kept a-hooping and a-screeching. Ee-yaw, ya-ya-ya-ya-ya-ya. Ee-yaw, ya-ya-ya-ya-ya. And all of a sudden, that stick came to a complete halt and flew right back into his hand. Well, that's when Harvey Potter stopped screeching. He turned round and looked directly up at that sycamore tree. I thought he saw me for sure, but I guess not, 'cause he turned back on around and went into his house, and he didn't come out again. What do you think? Do you think he saw her? I calmed down and fell off to sleep a-waiting. In the morning, when I woke up wet with dew and shivering cold, little bitty colored mounds were popping up all over the ground. When I ran back after supper time, they had all come up in the glory of that day's sun. Whew, I tell you, it was a sight. Harvey Potter saw me out there in his fields admiring his latest crop of balloons. He said I could take as many as I wanted. I just took 3, a clown and an elephant, and I couldn't resist a jelly bean black one. I did not touch the monster ones on account of they were too plain scary. Oh, those were the times. Harvey Potter went right on growing the best, prettiest balloons a sight of anywhere, and we never heard a word from the government men again neither. As for Weasel Mayfield, he's so riled up over the fun we were having with our balloons, he packed up and moved off to parts unknown. Oh, I remember those days well. It was the summer of '59, and I was hankering to leave home myself and find out what the world had to offer. Harvey Potter grew me a balloon that was big enough to carry me off. That's how I landed in this place here. I never did go back home, never did want to. This here place was just right for me. These days, I farm, and I am not one to brag, but I have harvested my 32nd crop of balloons. Now, I don't grow mine the exact same way as Harvey Potter does on account of I am not Harvey Potter. I have my own methods, and maybe I'll show you someday.